The room was cold and dark and full of fear. The walls were made of thick black stone, and the air smelled like dust and pain. Metal bars kept the prisoners locked in like animals. Each one sat close to the next, with no space to stretch or lie down. They were from different places. Some were human, some were not, but they all looked the same. Now broken, hungry, and waiting to die. Ray sat near the back, his hands tied behind him, his shirt torn, and blood dried on his face. He had not spoken in hours. Maybe more. No one really knew how long they had been here. The lights never changed. The guards never told the time, but they all knew something bad was coming. People cried in soft whispers. Others stared at the floor with wide, empty eyes. A few looked up when the sound of boots came closer. It meant food, or beatings, or news, and none of it was ever good. The guards wore red masks that covered their faces and armor that clicked when they moved. They spoke in sharp words and laughed when prisoners flinched. Then came a new sound, softer, lighter, small footsteps echoing through the hallway. The boots stopped, and a new guard appeared, dragging something behind him. It was a girl, small, maybe 6 years old, her skin pale blue, her hair silver, and her eyes glowing like stars. She looked lost and scared, but she did not cry. The prisoners stared in silence as she was thrown into the cage with the rest of them. The guard kicked the bars and laughed, saying something in alien tongue, then walked away, leaving the girl alone among strangers. No one moved, not at first. They had learned that movement brought pain and noise brought punishment. But Ray looked at the girl, and something inside him turned. She was too small, too quiet, too calm for this place. He shifted slightly, and she noticed him. The girl crawled across the floor, slowly, careful not to touch anyone. She sat down right in front of Ray, and looked into his eyes. Her gaze was strange, not full of fear, but something else, something like knowing. She tilted her head, and whispered one word, soft as wind, human. The cage went silent. The prisoners held their breath, and even the air seemed to freeze. A click sounded from above. A guard had heard it. He came running down the hall, opened the cage, and pointed at Ryu. Come now, he barked. Ray was dragged out by the arms, the ropes cutting into his skin. He looked back at the girl, but she was still sitting there, still watching him, her face calm, her lips closed. The other prisoners stared with wide eyes, some thinking he was lucky, others thinking he was next to die. But Ray felt no luck. He felt fear and confusion. Why had she said that? Why him? He was taken through long halls, past doors with strange lights, past rooms where screams never stopped, and then into a chamber where 3 guards stood with weapons ready. A tall man stepped forward, not wearing a mask. His face was lined with age and hate. He looked Ray up and down, and then spoke. She chose you, he said. Ray said nothing, his mouth too dry, and his heart too loud. You are the one, the man said again. The guards pushed Ray into a small metal room, and locked the door behind him. He was alone now, nothing but silence and cold metal walls. He sat on the floor, trying to understand, trying to breathe, trying to forget the girl's eyes. Why me? He whispered to himself. No answer. Chimeras passed, maybe more, maybe less. He did not know. Then he heard something scratching, soft against the wall. He turned and saw a shape, a drawing, glowing, faint blue lines. It was a child's drawing, a stick figure of a girl, holding the hand of someone bigger, someone tall, and standing proud, and that someone had his face. Ray blinked and touched the wall. The line stayed. He did not know what it meant, but he knew one thing: this was not just a prison. This was something else. Something had begun, and the little girl had started it. She had pointed at him, said one word, and now the silence was breaking. Ray looked up into the dark ceiling and whispered back into the shadows, I am still here. And somewhere beyond the walls, someone was listening. The cage was silent again, but the silence was no longer safe. It had become a warning, and soon the whole prison would feel it. Ray sat on the cold floor of the new cell, his hands still tied, his legs sore from being dragged through metal halls. The silence here was different, not like the cage of silence where fear lived in every corner. This silence felt heavy, like something was watching from the shadows. Walls were smoother here, the lights low and red like a warning, and the air smelled clean, which made Ray feel more uneasy than before. He had not seen the little girl again since she spoke that word, since everything changed. He remembered how the guards froze when she said it, how one guard whispered into a wrist device, then nodded like he had heard something important. Then they grabbed Ray like he was the one they were looking for, like they had been waiting for her to choose someone. Now he was here in this strange place alone, except for the sound of a soft hum coming from somewhere in the wall. Then came the voice, not loud but clear through a small speaker above his head. You were chosen, the voice said. Ray looked up, but saw nothing. Just the red light blinking slowly like a heartbeat. Why me? He asked, his voice rough from dust and silence. There was a pause, then the voice answered. She knows things she should not. She is not just a child. She remembers things we do not understand. Ray shook his head and leaned back against the wall. What does she remember? He asked again. The voice paused, then replied, Human face, a face from long ago, a face like yours. Ray frowned confused. That cannot be, I am no one. But the voice kept going. Long ago, a human came here, he led a battle, he left behind something we could not break, something only he could unlock. We believe that something is connected to Ray, felt his heart race. Do not know any warrior, I have never fought any battle you carry. The mark, the voice said, and the child saw it. Ray stood up and stepped closer to the wall. What mark? I do not see anything. The speaker went silent, the hum in the wall grew louder and the lights turned blue. Opened behind him. 2 guards stepped in, but their weapons were lowered, their masks were off, and they looked at him not with hate, but with caution. You will come with us, one of them said. Ray followed, still confused, but too tired to fight. They led him through halls that twisted and turned like a maze, until they reached a small room with a glass wall behind it. Sat the child, her eyes glowing softly as she looked at something on a screen. We stepped closer to the glass. She turned her head and smiled. The guard said nothing. They watched in silence as the child placed her hand on the glass. Ray did the same without thinking, and the glass lit up with bright line symbols. Moved across the surface, human letters, mixed with alien ones. Then an image appeared, the same stick figure drawing he had seen in the wall. The girl pointed at it, then pointed at Ray. He is the one, she said in a soft voice. The guards looked at each other, and one of them stepped forward. You must understand something, the guard said. We have studied her mind for years. She was grown in a lab, meant to follow orders, but she does not listen. She dreams of things we cannot explain. She draws your face before ever seeing you. Ray stared at the image. This makes no sense. One guard nodded and replied it should not, but it does. The old warrior left behind a message, a weapon, a secret, and he said only one like him could awaken it. And you think I am like him? Ray asked. The girl spoke again. You are not like him, you are him. Ray stepped back, shaking his head. No, that cannot. Beatty lights turned red again, and the speaker in the wall came back to life. Danger in cell block, the voice said. Prepare, all units. Guards looked at each other. One of them handed Ray a small silver chip. Take this, it will open the old door down below where they keep the machine. We are out of time. Ray took the chip, still unsure of anything, but knowing he had no choice. The girl stood up, walked to the other side of the glass, and whispered one last word. Remember. The lights flickered as alarms began to scream and smoke poured through the floor. Thence Ray turned and ran with the chip clutched in his hand. Guards shouted behind him, and the floor shook with heavy steps. He did not know what the machine was, or what it would do, but he knew one thing now: he was marked, and whatever waited in the dark below it had waited for him. Ray ran through the long hallway with the chip in his hand, his feet hitting the ground hard as red lights flashed all around him. The air was thick with smoke, and the sound of alarms echoed off the metal walls. The path twisted and split, but Ray followed the one with the old markings on the wall, markings that looked human, not alien. He heard shouts behind him, guards yelling in a strange tongue, but they did not shoot, not yet. Maybe they were told not to, maybe they still needed him alive, or maybe they were scared of what was down below. He reached a sealed door with a scanner on the side. It was covered in dust and strange symbols. Ray wiped it clean and placed the chip into the slot. The machine beeped, then paused, then scanned his face. Blue light swept over his skin, and the door hissed open. Behind the door was a narrow stairway, leading down into darkness. No lights, no noise, just a cold feeling in the air. Ray took a breath and stepped down, one slow step at a time. At the bottom, he found a small room with glass walls, old chairs, broken screens, and strange writing on the walls in both alien and human script. In the middle of the room sat a black cube, glowing faintly, as if it had been waiting. Ray moved closer. The cube lit up brighter, and a screen popped up from its side, showing a video. An old human soldier looked out from the screen. He had gray hair and tired eyes. He wore the same armor Ray had seen in the glowing wall drawing. If you are seeing this, the man said, it means she found you. It means you are the key. Ray leaned in, confused. The soldier looked just like him, only older. Long ago, I came here with a team. We failed. We were betrayed, and I left this behind, a lock that only someone with my code could open. You have that code, not by blood, but by echo. Ray shook his head. What is an echo? The soldier kept speaking. She carries memories, old memories, deeper than DNA. She remembers my kindness, my choice to save her, when no one else would, and now she has passed that memory to you, not with words, but with trust. The screen showed an image of the alien girl, younger, still glowing. She was with the old soldier, holding his hand, just like she had held Ray. Remembers more than you know. She remembers the feeling of safety, and that is why she chose you. Ray stepped back as the cube shifted, opening slowly. A small device rose from inside, a strange key-shaped tool glowing with soft blue light. Take it, said the voice. Ray reached out and held the key. It was warm and pulsing, like it was alive. Suddenly, The screens lit up with flashing text. Unauthorized access detected. All units respond. The cube shut down, and a wall opened behind Ray, showing a secret tunnel with metal steps leading deeper. Ray ran again, deeper into the unknown, following the path the soldier had left so many years ago. The end, he found another room, larger and colder, with a machine in the center, tall, like a tower with strange arms hanging from its sides. This was the weapon, or maybe something even older than a weapon. The key in Ray's hand began to glow brighter. He placed it into the slot on the machine, and waited. Lights flickered, sounds filled the air, and the machine came to life. Screens opened around him, showing maps, memories, faces, files labeled Ghost Project Echo Core Human. Resurgence. One file opened by itself, showing the child's image next to Ray's, and a line of code that said match. Confirmed. Ray stepped back, heart pounding. What am I? The machine answered, not with words but with sound, deep and rising like a voice from the stars. Then came another sound, not from the machine but from the tunnel. Behind him, footsteps. Ray turned, ready to fight, but it was the girl. She had escaped the guards again, and come looking for him. She held out her hand, not afraid, not confused, just sure. We are not done, she said. Ray nodded, and took her hand together. They faced the glowing machine, and waited for what came next, because now the past had found him, the future was calling, and the ghost of the old war was no longer tied, had chosen to rise again through him, through the one the child had named Human. The machine behind Ray kept glowing, its lights moving like waves across the floor. The air was heavy with heat and energy. The girl stood beside him, holding his hand, her small fingers gripping tight, as if she knew danger was coming soon from deep inside the tunnel. They had come through. The sound of metal boots echoed again. The guards were not far, now their voices loud, their orders clear. They wanted Ray, they wanted the girl, but Ray did not plan to go back. He looked at the strange machine in front of him, its tall body humming with power, and strange symbols lighting up all over its surface. He did not know how to use it, not yet, but he felt it was connected to him, like a part of him was waking up inside. The girl stepped forward and touched a panel on the machine. The lights shifted, showing new images. The old human soldier from the last video appeared again, only now he was standing inside a battlefield, his face covered in ash, his voice shaking, as he said, "These weapons are not made to destroy. They are made to protect, but only if the right soul commands." Gemray felt something move under his skin, not pain, not fear, just a feeling like fire and memory blending together, like the machine could see into him and was searching for something, something only he had. The girl looked up at him and said, "We must go now, or they will stop you before it begins." Ray nodded and turned to the machine. He pulled the glowing key free, and the machine powered down slowly, its lights fading like stars at sunrise. Together, they ran through another opening on the other side of the room, a narrow path, lit by soft blue lights that turned on as they passed. The walls were marked with symbols that Ray could now read, somehow old human words, mixed with alien shapes. "Protect the child. Guard the flame. Only the kind shall lead." The tunnel ended in a wide space filled with old crates, broken weapons, and an old transport ship covered in dust and vines. Ray touched the door, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside was dark, but the systems came alive at his touch. Screens lit up, showing maps and flight paths. The ship was small, but it could fly, and that was all they needed. He helped the girl climb in, then followed, locking the hatch behind them. The engines began to hum. A voice inside the ship said, "Welcome." Echo signature confirmed, preparing for launch. But before the ship could rise, a loud crash came from the entrance of the chamber. The guards had found them. Ray jumped to the control panel, hands flying across buttons. He did not fully understand. The ship began to lift, but a blast shook the hull and alarms screamed. A voice came through the ship's speaker, low and rough. It was the scarred guard, the one who had given Ray the chip in the celly. "Am not here to stop you," he said. "I am here to help." Ray paused, unsure, then opened the hatch slightly. The scarred guard stepped inside, fast closing it behind him. His armor burned, but his eyes sharp. "You are the only one who can lead this now," he said. "The girl has chosen, and the machine has accepted you. The rest of us can only follow or fall." Ray asked, "Why are you helping me?" The god looked at the girl and said, "I was there when the old one fell. I saw what he did for her, how he saved her, how he died, so she could live. I believed in that man, and now I believe in you." Ray nodded, and turned back to the controls. The engines roared. The ship rose higher, and then shot through the old ceiling into the night sky below. Then the prison burned, red lights flashing, as guards shouted, and chaos spread. The prisoners had started to fight back. Ray looked down one last time, then up at the stars. The girl sat beside him, quiet and calm, her eyes glowing gently. "Where do we go now?" he asked. She smiled and said, "Where the stars began." Ray did not know what waited ahead, or who would try to stop them next, but he knew this: he was no longer just a prisoner, he was no longer just a name. He had become something more something. The stars had not seen in many years. He had become the echo of a legend. The child beside him was not just a guide. She was a spark that would set the galaxy on fire. The ship flew through black space stars, spinning outside the windows like silver sparks. Ray sat at the controls, his hands tight on the levers, his heart still racing from the escape. The girl sat beside him silent, her glowing eyes fixed on something. He could not see the scarred guard stood behind them, watching both of them with a strange look, not of fear, not of hate, but of quiet respect. They had escaped the prison, but not the truth. The truth was following them like a shadow. One Ray did not yet understand. The girl had pointed at him, called him the One, and now they were flying to a place no one had dared to visit for years. The guard leaned forward and said, "There is a place deep under the broken moons where the old ones hid what they could not destroy the last time this war rose. It ended there, and if we are lucky, it will begin again, in the same place." Ray asked, "What is there? What am I supposed to find?" The guard answered, "You will know when you see it." The ship passed a broken ring of metal, a dead station spinning slowly through the dark, then dove toward a small moon covered in sharp rocks and ancient craters. The ground below looked empty, but the scanner showed something buried beneath. They landed near a crack in the ground, so thin it looked like a shadow. The girl climbed out first, her small hands brushing against the stone as if she remembered the place from a dream. She walked toward the crack, and the rocks shifted as if moved by unseen hands, revealing a narrow staircase leading down into the dark. Ray followed with the guard close behind. Every step echoed like thunder in a place where no sound had lived for many years. The air grew colder as they moved deeper, the walls smooth and black and covered in writing that seemed to shine when the girl passed by. The guard lit a torch, and the fire danced across symbols, both human and alien. Ray paused in front of a door, taller than any wall, made of silver metal, and covered in the same glowing marks. In the center of the door was a handprint, not large but small, shaped like the hand of a child. The girl looked at Ray, then stepped forward and placed her hand on the print. The metal shimmered, then vanished like mist, and the door opened with no sound. At Alan's side was a chamber filled with light, a soft blue light that came from a tall pillar in the center of the room. The pillar was made of glass, and inside it floated something that looked like armor, but not like any Ray had ever seen. It moved on its own, like it breathed its surface, shifting between metal and light. The guard stepped forward and said, "That is the armor of the first Echo. The one who came before you, the one who gave everything for the child, and now it waits for the next, who carries." His soul. Ray stared at it, feeling the same strange fire in his chest that he had felt near the machine in the prison. It was not fear, it was like the armor knew him. He asked, "What happens if I wear it?" The girl said, "You do not wear it, it chooses you." Ray stepped closer. The armor moved gently, floating down until it hovered just above the ground. Then it opened wide, as if waiting. Ray looked at the guard, then at the girl. Then he stepped forward and let the armor wrap around him. There was no pain, only heat and sound and memory. He saw flashes of battle, faces of people he had never met, but felt like he knew. He saw the old soldier fighting side by side with the girl against creatures made of fire and shadows. He saw the child cry as the soldier fell and whispered the same words she had whispered to him, "human." Then the light faded and Ray stood in silence, the armor now a part of him, not just covering his body, but touching his mind. The guard fell to one knee and bowed his head. "The Echo lives again," he said. Ray looked at his hands, now silver and strong, the armor responding to his every thought. The girl reached out and touched his chest, with a mark of the old warrior. "Now glowed you are ready?" she said. Ray asked for what. She looked up at him and answered, "For the war that never ended." From the walls around them, machines began to rise, old machines left by the humans. Long ago they hummed to life, and one voice spoke through the chamber, "Welcome back." Ray stood still, heart steady. For the first time he did not feel lost. He felt like the path was clear, like the stars had always led him here. He had come to the secret chamber, searching for answers, and what he found was himself. Ray stood in the center of the glowing chamber. The armor wrapped around his body like it had always belonged there. It was not heavy, it was not cold, it felt like light and strength and memory all at once. The girl stood beside him, her silver hair glowing softly in the blue light, and the scarred guard waited at the edge of the chamber, his eyes filled with something like hope. The machines around them had come to life. Old metal towers that had slept for years now stood tall with lights blinking and voices whispering in languages lost to time. The chamber shook gently as power flowed through the floor and walls like blood through veins. A voice from the machine spoke again, this time louder, clearer. "Echo Core confirmed command. Accepted human protocol activated." Ray looked down at his hands covered in living metal and saw shapes forming across the surface, shapes that told stories without words. He saw stars burning, saw ships flying, saw the face of the first warrior, the one who had worn this armor before him, the one the girl had called the first human. The voice said, "The enemy has returned." The darkness moves once more across the stars. "You have been chosen not for your strength but for your choice. Your soul remembers what others forget." Ray stepped forward, and the machines responded, showing him maps and signals and warnings, planets marked in red lines drawn across space paths of invasion and destruction. The girl looked up at him and said, "The enemy never truly left. They waited for the right moment. Now they see you and they are afraid." Ray asked, "What do I do now?" The god stepped forward and said, "Now you lead." Ray nodded and turned to the machines, his mind opening to the data flowing into the armor. He could feel ships buried deep in the moon waiting for command, weapons hidden across systems, forgotten by time, allies in chains, waiting for someone to stand. He raised his hand and spoke one word: "Awaken." The ground shook harder, and from the depths of the moon came the sound of great engines rumbling. One by one, ancient ships lifted from the dust and rock, rising like ghosts into the sky, their lights bright, their weapons ready. The girl smiled and said, "They waited for you, just like I did." Ray led them back to the surface, where the sky was black, and stars blinked through thin clouds. The ships hovered above the ground, silent and strong, waiting for his next word. Before he could speak, the stars shifted, a shadow passed over the sky, and from above came the sound of warships cutting through space. The enemy had arrived. Dre looked up and saw the shape of their vessels, sharp and dark, like knives through the void, their lights red, their size massive, their weapons aimed at the moon. The armor around him tightened, sensing the threat and giving him power. The ships above responded to his thoughts, forming a shield around the moon, preparing for battle. Ray opened a channel, his voice carried across the system to every ship, every prisoner, every rebel hiding in the dark. "This is the echo," he said. "This is not the end, this is the rise. We will not run, we will not break. We are human, and we stand." Enemy fired first, red beams of energy cutting through space. The shield held, but cracked sparks flew as the shock hit the surface of the moon. Ray took to the sky, the armor lifting him up into the air, wings of light spreading behind him. The enemy ships turned to follow, but the old machines moved faster, shooting beams that lit the black sky like fire. The battle had begun. Ray moved like a flame, dodging blasts and striking back every move, guided by the armor, by memory, by something older than fear. The girl watched from the surface, her eyes locked on him, her hand pressed to her chest. The guard stood beside her, his weapon ready, watching the battle unfold and whispering to himself, "He flies like the old one." Ray reached the lead enemy ship and slammed into its side, breaking through the hull and tearing through metal and bone. He fought with hands and will, and fired. The enemy screamed in voices not meant for light, but Ray did not stop. He reached the core of the ship and planted the key, the same key the girl had given him back in the prison. The ship shook, then exploded from the inside out, a light so bright it covered the stars. For a moment Trey flew free, landing on the nearest human ship. His armor burned but still strong, his voice calm but full of fire. The first victory was his, but he knew it was not over. He looked back at the moon, saw the girl waving at him, saw the scarred guard lift his fist. Hera raised his hand in return and spoke again. "This is the beginning." The ghost had risen, and the stars would never forget his name. The sky above the broken moon still glowed with fire and ash. The stars were hidden by smoke and metal, but the battle was over for now. Ray stood on the deck of the ancient ship, his armor cracked and scorched but still alive, the light in his chest still pulsing strong. The child stood beside him, her small hand holding his, without fear, without doubt. The enemy had fallen back, their ships drifting into the dark, leaving only silence behind. The human fleet, once lost, once forgotten, had returned. Under the command of the one they called the Echo, the scarred guard walked to Ray, his face tired but proud, and said, "They heard your voice across the stars, and they followed because of you." Ray looked out at the stars, his eyes scanning the broken pieces of enemy ships floating through space. He had never wanted to fight. He had never asked for this power, but the choice had been made the day the little girl said one word: "Humanity." Remembered the cage, the fear, the silence, the hopeless eyes of the others. The moment her voice broke through the dark like a spark in dry grass, and everything changed. He did not understand why she had chosen him, not then, not even now, but he knew her choice had saved not just him but all of Thema. New signal came through the ship's system, a call from a planet deep in the shadow zone, a place marked as lost for many years. The message was weak, filled with static, but one thing was clear, a child's voice saying, "Please help us, we remember the." Turned to the girl, and she nodded, her eyes bright with something he could not name. The scarred guard said, "This is just the first of many. They will come one by one, hoping you will answer, hoping the word still means something, hoping the fire still Burns Ray gave the command, the fleet turned toward, the voice toward, the signal toward the place where another lost soul had whispered the same word. They reached the planet hours later. The surface burned, the cities broken, but in the center of the ruins stood a group of survivors, led by a small boy, his skin the color of ash, his eyes wide with wonder, as he looked up at Ray. "You really him?" the boy asked. Ray knelt down the armor, shifting gently, and said, "I am just a Manthi boy," smiled and said, "No, you are the word." She spoke that night. The fleet gave aid, food, water, light, medicine, voices of hope, where silence had lived for years. The people sang songs in languages Ray did not know, but he understood the meaning. They were not alone anymore. In the command ship, the girl stood at the window watching the stars. She whispered something, and the system repeated it, a soft message. Carried across the dark to every broken world, to every child waiting in fear, the echo has returned. One by one new signals began to light up across the galaxy, calls from hidden cities, from ruined planets, from voices long thought lost. They all said the same thing. The echo lives. Ray stood at the center of it all, not a king, not a god, not a hero, just a man who had been chosen by a child who remembered something others had forgotten. Kinister. Skarsgård wrote the words into the new code of the fleet. The first law: no soul is too small, no voice is too quiet. No light is ever lost if one remembers. The armor that Ray wore was placed in the heart of the new command base, not as a weapon, not as a prize, but as a symbol. Anyone may wear it when the time comes, but only if the child speaks the word. Many tried to understand why the girl had chosen Ray, why she had said that one word, why it had changed everything, but she never gave the full answer until one night, years later, when she stood beside a new child, lost and afraid, and whispered, "Because he looked at me and did not see a tool or a prisoner or a weapon. He saw a child, and that saved the galaxy." The word was never just a name. It was a promise, a fire, a bond stronger than fear, stronger than war, stronger than command. So it passed from one child to another, from one planet to the next, from one broken heart to one brave hand. Human, that was the word that saved them all.